stabilization, once you've mastered 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 5, the picture gets a little clearer. Stabilization. Myth. I've stabilized the property. The hell you did. No property is ever stabilized. You're always one tenant away. You're always one fire away. You're always one clogged main, or an AC. You're always 1 or 2 issues away from the property being out of whack or out of budget. So the myth that, hey, look, I've stabilized this property, you stabilize it for today. Tomorrow, you might have a tenant, 2 might argue, 1 might throw another one through a window or sliding glass door, it might start a fire, it might burn down. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, I'm just saying, for someone that says, hey, look, I've stabilized the property's never stabilized. It's always a balancing act. That's why we have management plans. That's why the management plans lead to an operations on how to run the property day to day, from which the property manager has to report to me on a weekly basis through dashboard reports, rent rolls, delinquencies, traffic reports, etc., etc., etc. I'm looking at these reports and I'm able to guide the ship. And I'm able to see when things are wrong, high vacancy rates, why are renewals so low? Why are delinquencies and rent collections so low? I'm able to see these things on a weekly basis and fix them on a monthly basis. I fix them when they're acorns before they become an oak tree, a major problem. So a property is really never stabilized. I'm always looking at that. And then the most important reports I'm looking at, they're all important, but the most are the budget variance reports. See, now that goes back to that management plan. The management plan dictates the budget, as I said. The budget has a budget variance report, a very simple report that my children can read. And they're both 4 and 7. It says, your chart of accounts, just like any chart of accounts, marketing, management, plumbing and repairs, your normal chart of accounts, and it'll say, hey, you budgeted $5,000 a unit. You're either, depending on how you run your reports, you're either O, over, or U, under. Some people use F, favorable and non-favorable, whatever you want to use. But it's a simple letter, and I can run down the report and see whether we're over budget or under. You don't want to see a bunch of O's, right, for over. You want to see the U's for under. So at the end of the day, you're just running your finger across. If you see a bunch of O's for over maintenance, over, I'm able to call maintenance in or call the property manager and say, hey, look, we've been over budget within this 30 days. I don't want to see it into a 60 or a 90-day period, because then we have an issue. But we're making these adjustments on a really month-to-month basis. So I'm catching a lot of these things that happen on the property day to day, and in what I call real time, by looking at this dashboard. So when things are out of whack, think of it just like NASCAR or Formula One. In the grandstands, there's a spotter. You have the pit crew down low on the racetrack level, right? You've got the driver, who's your property manager, and the pit crew, who's your property manager. Asset managers, owners, asset managers are the ones in the grandstand, and they're spotting and saying, hey, listen, your oil levels are too high. Hey, listen, your fuel consumption is too, you need to ease back. They're in the year of the drive, okay? Hey, yo, turn 2, there's been an accident in turn 2, you need to get low. So-and-so is high, you need to, and they're making those adjustments. That's asset management. We're down making adjustments by looking at those reports. I'm looking at these reports and I'm saying, hey, look, make these proper adjustments here and there on a monthly basis, and getting ahead of things like COVID. So when COVID did hit, it didn't drastically sink my ship like it did for a lot of individuals. Because I was looking at these weekly reports, you can't catch me off guard. I might be a lot of things. I'm some dumb. I ain't never been plumb dumb. So you're able to look at these things and say, I can see it. I mean, hell, Stevie Wonder can look at these reports and see these things coming. It's that simple. I can see when you're over budget, under budget. I can see our renewals. I was able to see our traffic reports and see the things that were happening, why people were being declined, why all of a sudden people were, whether or not they were non-renewing. I was able to see these things. And I've seen issues, and I made adjustments to what? The qualifying criteria. So when I made adjustments to the qualifying criteria and some of the rules and regulations, well, what some of the things you made adjustments to, Brian? Well, in the qualifying criteria, if you came from the service industry, I asked for an extra deposit. So I changed my lease from your rent's due on the 1st, late on the 3rd, to your rent is due on the 1st, late on the 1st. So there was no grace period, because the law gives you a grace period. It's called a 3-day notice. So I made those type of adjustments because I seen that the eviction process was being, what was that, the moratorium and all the issues that we were having with evictions. So I said, well, hell, why am I going to give you an extra couple of weeks? Let's shorten the grace period up. So by looking at these reports, I'm able to make these adjustments. Also, if you don't like NASCAR and you like football, think of it like getting your ass kicked in the first half and then coming into the halftime and making what? Adjustments. And coming back out in the second half and understanding you was getting thrown over the top. So hey, let's bring our DBs back. Let's run different packages, different offenses, different defenses, make adjustments. Why the Patriots are so good? Because they know how to make the proper adjustments. They got the personnel. Ain't always the best, talented, but they're the best at making the right type of adjustments at the right time. Look what happened when you have the Dallas Cowboys. They can't even, they get the ball into the red zone and can't keep an eye on the clock. Now the coach or the quarterback could figure how to keep an eye on the clock and get that ball spiked. But it's seconds. Seconds, people think small things like that make no difference. But guess what? Those seconds cost them the game. Anybody a football fan? Or does anyone know the game I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Did those seconds not cost them the game?
Yep.
But seconds don't mean nothing, Brian. It's just seconds. It's just delinquencies. It's just they were just late 4 or 5 days. It's just 3 extra days. Why are we worried about changing the lease all of a sudden till late on the 1st? It's just because the game is won and lost in the margins. Seconds will lose you a chance at the championship. Seconds will lose you a chance. So now if it takes you long to get that cash flow in, now my IRR projections are off. Because IRR is based on efficiency. It's a measure of time. So now if I said I promise you in the offering memorandum an 18% IRR, but I said I'll renovate these units, I'll put in $2,000, the rents are $1,800, I'll get them to $2,000, but now because I've mismanaged on a matter of seconds, it's taking me 90 days instead of 30 days to renovate and get that thing leased up. Now I can't lease it at $2,000, I can probably get $1,700. That changes the IRR. So we don't think about that. Because most of us, well hell, most of us probably don't even know what IRR really is. It's a measure of efficiency. That's what it is. So if I'm no longer efficient at getting that return, now I still may get that return, but if I'm no longer efficient, the IRR is different. So I'm really not getting that 19% IRR as I promised. These are the things that we have to pay attention to because the competition in multifamily space gets tighter, and that's why operators are so important. Is that making any sense to anybody? This is a lot. So once you stabilize and figure out that stabilization is a constant balancing act, the rest takes care of itself. The growth and the exit strategy are byproducts of doing 1, 2, and 3 correctly, especially 1 and 2. Because if you don't start right, you don't end right. Okay?